After the last video, you've taken some time to work on your emotions in the body worksheet, both on your own and with a trusted friend or colleague. Because emotions always manifest themselves physically first, it is so essential that you can recognize them as they are happening. So let's go back to our limbic system and talk about Amy a bit more. Remember, when information enters your brain, it starts at the base and then travels first to your limbic system, your emotional brain. So your first reaction will always be an emotional reaction. It's your amygdala or Amy's job to protect you. She'll consult with your hippocampus, where your long-term memories are stored, to give you direction on moving forward. In this lesson, we're going to spend a little time talking about emotional hijacking. The definition of hijacking is to seize control of. Emotional hijacking refers to a situation in which Amy, your amygdala, hijacks or bypasses your normal reasoning process. During emotional hijacking, the stressors that we react to disable the higher cortex of the brain, preventing us from making sound, rational decisions. A person suffering from emotional hijacking may become extremely reactive, defensive, and lash out at the stressor. And if that stressor is another person, things can turn negative quickly. So preventing emotional hijacking from occurring in the first place is paramount to being successful in the workplace. Leaders who can handle emotional triggers are better able to navigate challenging situations, and here's why. When you're in the middle of an emotional reaction, your emotional brain runs the show. Your cognitive brain, responsible for attention and impulse control and planning, they're not playing an active role at this point. In other words, during an emotional reaction, you are not using your higher thinking for decisions. When emotional buttons or triggers are pushed, we automatically react in a knee-jerk way that feels necessary for survival. Leaders who recognize this can step back and make a more thoughtful and rational decision to respond in a situation. One way to avoid emotional hijacking is to increase your emotional intelligence and to identify and proactively address your triggers. Now, the good news is, just as muscles, emotional intelligence can be strengthened. Practice makes perfect. And it all starts with identifying the stressors or stimuli that trigger these responses. Once the stressors are identified, the key is to diffuse the emotional outburst before it occurs. When someone encounters a stressful situation and finds their heart racing or their muscles tightening up and their mind begins spiraling into a reactive mode, the absolute best thing they can do is hit the pause button. People are all wired differently. Those who are in better control of their emotions are more likely to thwart emotional hijacking than those who lack emotional control. For someone more sensitive, small things can set a person off. These stressors can surface through any of our senses, and they can manifest themselves physically, mentally, or emotionally. Now, some people can be triggered by physical things such as bad smells, someone chewing with their mouth open, or a coworker who talks too loud. At the same time, another worker may be set off by emotions triggering from political or religious conversations. Have you ever gone ballistic when someone cuts you off in traffic? Road rage is a classic example of emotional hijacking. So anger, fear, excitement, love, hate, disgust, and frustration are all things that can trigger a potential emotional hijacking. A trigger is an experience that draws us back into the past and causes old feelings and behaviors to arise. When we are triggered without awareness of our emotions, we react in a certain way out of habit. Our typical emotional reaction developed because we had a need we wanted to be met, whether that need was conscious or unconscious. We all have conditions that trigger us to react quickly rather than thoughtfully. We are all human, and having emotional triggers that cause you to behave negatively does not make you a bad person. Instead, I want you to view them as an opportunity to grow and develop into an even better person. Emotional triggers are a little like habits. They're shortcuts you develop over time to help you deal with particular situations. The best and most straightforward way to monitor your behavior is to keep a journal. Whenever you behave in an undesired manner, make a record of your thoughts, your feelings, the emotions, and the situation you were in when the behavior took place. Note what's going on in your head and your surroundings at the time. Be as detailed as you can be. Tracking your triggers is the first step in mastering them. It allows you to identify patterns and pinpoint the cause of your behavior. When you can do this, you are then in a position to make changes. Understanding yourself is the key. If you want to change your behavior, it's not enough to simply stop behaving that way. That approach is rarely effective. You need to substitute a new behavior. Brainstorm new strategies you can use instead of the old behavior. For example, you have a colleague with whom you have frequent arguments. She is passive-aggressive and always pushing your buttons. Your typical response is to overreact, and then you get the blame pinned on you, making you look like the bad guy. In the future, you need to change how you react to your colleague when you feel she is trying to push your buttons. Your new response could just be to walk away. This will probably upset the other person because they are no longer getting the reaction they had hoped for and had come to expect out of you. And once people begin to notice your response, they will pay more attention to her behavior. They'll start to see where the issues truly stem from. Now, download the Triggers worksheet and identify things that may cause an emotional trigger in you. What is your emotional response? And then I want you to identify what your new reaction will be. Once you are more aware of your common triggers, you can anticipate situations where they occur. Like when your boss reschedules your one-on-one meeting again, or when your colleague points out your mistakes in front of the entire team. Preparing yourself for the standard trigger by thinking through your ideal reaction will loosen the grip of your emotional triggers and break the habit. After completing the worksheet, talk with your trusted friend or colleague and get their input.